Hi, my name's Amy Archer Masters, and under Portland City Code and state law, the Portland Utility Board is holding this meeting electronically. Board members and relevant city staff are attending remotely electronically or by phone, and the city has made it available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The meeting is being recorded. The public will have an opportunity to provide comments during the public comment portion of the agenda, and can also provide written testimony to the board by emailing utilityboard@portlandoregon.gov. PUB believes and acts upon anti-racist principles in our meeting spaces and in interactions with PUB. While every person has the right to share their personal perspective, we stand against wrongful conduct, particularly any conduct that is targeted toward people that are made vulnerable by systemic inequities. This means stepping up as a community when there is wrongful conduct and fostering a space of learning and growth. We put our principles into action by speaking up and speaking out. Each person is empowered to maintain the culture of the Portland Utility Board, and we focus on the impacted individual or population, condemning the conduct, not the person. I'll quickly run through the meeting guidelines. Please state your name before you speak, and if appropriate, the name of the person you're addressing or that you're addressing the group. The chat box is only viewable by me, PUB staff, so please try to limit any chats to technical and logistical issues, including signing up for public comment, asking for technical assistance, or reminding us if you've been waiting to speak and haven't been called on. The raise hand function is primarily used by the board or participants when a discussion is taking place. I may lower your hand once you've begun speaking just to maintain the flow of conversation. During public comment periods, the public can also raise their hand and you'll be called on when appropriate. If you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *9 to raise or lower your hand. Videos may be turned on when you're speaking if desired. It is not required. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking, and if you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *6 to mute or unmute yourself. Public comment will be taken during the comment period early in the meeting. You can sign up through chat with me or raise your hand during the comment period. It's also available just prior to any formal board vote after a motion has been made and seconded by board members. The agenda for today, we'll get through the initial opening business. There's a few brief items and updates. And then, I did not, okay. I think I didn't update all of the brief items. There's actually some other items, not recruitment. There's some other items that are on the brief updates. And then we'll have a brief update from Water Bureau on hiring, retention, and promotion and some board discussion on that topic. And then do some internal work on the budget recommendations, work plan, and talk about some next steps that the board wants to take in those areas. And then we have a few announcements and just some internal logistical work that we need to do on some items. And then hopefully we will adjourn on time at 5 p.m. So we will start with disclosures of communication. So does anybody in the room have disclosures to share?
I'm
Go
going to
ahead,
raise my
Lorraine.
hand. Yeah, I just want to disclose that last month, some staff members from the city of Portland reached out to me concerning the consolidation of the permitting functions into one bureau, and they felt that they weren't consulted enough on it, and that there are concerns about it. The implementation is going to fail. So I just wanted to disclose that, and I shared that with the chair.
Thank you, Lorraine. And when Robin gets on, one of the brief updates we included a brief update about that. So we may, if she's not on when we get to that topic, we'll come back to it before the meeting is done. So she'll be able to share that as a disclosure as well, what the testimony is and how it went. Any other disclosures from folks in the room? All right. I have not had any public comments submitted in advance of the meeting. Is there anybody in the room who wishes to share public comment? All right, seeing and hearing none, we will move on, but bear with me just a second so I can rename Robin and shift the baton briefly to her. We will move on to review and approval of the draft minutes. We have one set of minutes that was distributed to the board from May 16th. So we'll just take a minute to see if anybody had any edits to those minutes.
Hello, this is Robin. I looked over the draft minutes. Everything looked good. I just saw a spelling error, so I wasn't sure if that was like important enough to point out.
Yes, certainly you can either just shoot it over to me or let me know what it was.
Okay. It was on page 6, after point 7 in the 4th bulletin, in the first sub bulletin, and the 10th line. I think we have retrieved versus received.
Great.
But everything else looked great.
Noted. I will make the correction. Thank you, Robin. All right. So with that one correction, I think we can move on. And Robin, I'll let you take the lead from here on out.
Thank you. So with that, it looks like the May 16th meeting is approved. Meeting notes are approved. And so today, I'm going to give you just a brief update of some last minute things that went down with the pub regarding permitting and development, and then see if there's any natural resource service delivery updates from Bob and the like. And then hopefully we'll be doing some budget related, there'll be a budget related update. So I guess this is actually the part where I tell you what happened. So Lorraine brought it to my attention that the new permitting and developing bureau would be pulling money from Portland Water Bureau and BES's budget, and it was expected that that would actually lead to a rate increase higher than what was predicted. And so I just want to thank Lorraine for keeping our eye on that. And so it was like all of a whirlwind, but I was able to actually speak on behalf of Pub in front of the first hearing of the permitting. And I definitely, how do I say this? I didn't want us to come across as being against the idea, but our main issue was just that this entire budget cycle, the mayor and council have, specifically under the mayor's guidance, has been like, we have to limit spending at all costs. And it was like, it seemed like it was a major victory for them. And so to have this new, just to find out that the new permitting bureau is actually going to lead to an increase in rates that we were not expecting prior, or at least not been keen to how much it was going to impact us, was a little bit shocking. And so I spoke for maybe 2 to 3 minutes during public testimony, echoing some of the concerns of the union that represents the permitting, the current permitters, and basically saying that we appreciate the innovation and we agree with the need to streamline permitting, but having found out that these costs are going to increase and they're going to impact ratepayers more than expected only a couple of days before things are finalized is not the best that we can do. and basically just to ask for them to slow down the process a little bit, because it from the insider knowledge that I was receiving was that the original permitting office, what is it? The original idea, it came up in August of last year, and they had set a date for July 1st of this year to get it started. And it really felt like that date didn't have a lot of specific importance to it, and that it's good to have a deadline, but we definitely didn't want to be rushing a process. And so I basically just said, this is likely going to increase rates. We just had an entire budget session where we were told not to increase our rates, and now we are pushing through a new bureau without really knowing everything we need to know about it, and without having an adequate understanding of how it's going to increase rates. And so I went before council. If I am up to date with city council, I think council still went ahead and approved the new bureau. And so we'll just have to keep our eye on that as we are likely looking at some sort of rate increase along with it. So I'll wrap up my testimony on that one. Amy, did you have anything to add on that specifically?
No, I have nothing to add.
All right. And so with that, let me see, is Bob or anyone else who was recently in any natural resource service delivery meetings available for an update? Anything new happening?
Let me, actually, one clarification was just made based on the description and the language about rates, that I just want to clarify that the increased related to the permits, the rates themselves did not increase. So there was an increased impact to rates, but I believe it is absorbed within the existing rates. And so it's that they have to absorb it within the increasing rate. So it has an impact to other things that were happening, but it's not that the rates will increase. So just for clarification, the rates will not change, but that it does have impact within what the bureaus are spending it on, but that the rates themselves are not changing as a result of that decision.
Important clarification. Thank you for that. Go ahead.
And I see Alexis's hand raised, so I want to respond to that, and then I can follow up about the second question about natural resources. So Alexis, go ahead.
Thanks, Alexis Rife, voting board member. Just curious if we know, or if bureaus know, or if this is a request that we should put in about what the implications would be then for other budget items. Thanks Robin and Lorraine for getting on this so fast and with such short notice. But I guess and like, when is it implications for this year? Is this an immediate effect? In which case, I guess I'm a little confused, or will say that I continue to be frustrated with city council processes where decisions are made and budgets are adopted, and then changes are kind of made at the last minute without a lot of notification. So I'm just curious kind of what the implications are on the approved current budget.
Yes, I will get back to you with more information, Alexis, because there was some preliminary information, I believe, that was provided in the information that was presented to council, but I'm not sure that that's final. My understanding it is in next year's fiscal year budget, but I'm not sure that the Bureau, it all happened very fast. And so I think the Bureau still has a lot to work out about that, and things are still, a lot of things are moving. And so I'll work with the bureaus to get some information back to you, either in writing or something back at a future meeting. So I'll touch base with the bureaus about that.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
Thank you, Robin. Lorraine Wilson, voting pub member. I was able to attend the meeting virtually that Robin testified at. And as I said, when I brought it up, the concern was about the fact that there would be impact to rates, whether it increases it or it changes the dynamic of whether it's more stuff remain on more capital stuff remain outstanding or whatever it is. But what was really disturbing to me being on that meeting was hearing the staff speak about the impact and hearing the level of institutional knowledge that is going to be walking out the door with people actually retiring and looking for jobs who have worked in these permitting areas in different bureaus for a number of years. So because yes, our focus is on rates, but the type of institutional knowledge and experience that will be walking out the door will, I think, would also impact, because there's a cost to recruiting, there's a cost to training, and there is a cost to how long people take to be up to speed. And with all the changes that are happening, to layer this on with creating a new bureau, figuring out how the different permitting areas coming together from different bureau and how they will function, and what ordinance and what things overlap, and what the chief engineers from all these different bureaus coming together and how all that is happening. That is a conundrum. I think that should be concerning. And also, as we focus on rates, how is that going to impact what the rate process looks like in the coming years as we move forward? So I just wanted to raise that point. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lorraine, for that. And honestly, it might be a good idea to find a way for us to forward that testimony, and that way everyone can see it. There was the original August meeting that I watched, slightly sped up, and then there was the one most recently that is one that I spoke at. So I think it might be good for us to pass along that, or I could just pass along specifically the testimony that I gave in writing. But either way, I think it'll be important for everyone to check out what the testimony was, the pros and cons against it. But yeah, with that, I'll throw it back at Amy with the Natural Resource Service Delivery update.
Thank you, Robin. I actually do not have anything new to report. And Bob is not present today, I do not believe. Let me double check and make sure I did not let him in. And Julia is present, but I don't know that unless you have something to report, I do not believe there's anything new right at this point. So I've not seen any communications come through. So correct me if I'm wrong, Julia.
Yeah, I have nothing new to report. Okay. Although I do have a more open schedule now to engage more moving forward, which is exciting.
Good. That's good news. So I will let you folks know if I hear anything new come up. So otherwise, budget updates, I don't have a lot of new information. Things continue to move forward. So the process continues to move forward. So approved and adopted continue to move forward. The final phases, the tax supervising the TSCC hearing is on the 11th, I believe. So that's just right around the corner. So those are the kind of the some of those final steps towards getting it finally approved, as well as the final phases of the current year's budget. So the bureaus are kind of moving through all of those final phases. So as they're kind of furiously working through all of those, I will loop back with them about some of the requests that you have about kind of the request for kind of ongoing budget updates at meetings and convene and figure out what that would look like moving forward, and what updates would look like at meetings, and what some of your desires are. So if you have input about what types of information you're looking for, ideas about what might be helpful as you're getting oriented to information, please let me know, reach out to me. I'd love to have some conversations with those of you individually, if at all possible, just to make sure that kind of meeting individual needs as well as collective needs, and make sure that we're kind of planning appropriately for what you all need moving forward. So nothing specific to report at this point, but I will keep you all posted, and we'll certainly send out additional updates as we move forward. We'll have more conversation, time permitting, at the end of the meeting about budget recommendation stuff. I hope to be able to have a little bit of conversation about that as well, just because those conversations also continue within the city. And so I just want to, kind of circle back to that, and make sure that we take advantage of opportunities as they come up, to make sure that where I can, voice some of the feedback that you all have with folks who ask questions internally. I just want to make sure that we are able to take that opportunity when it arises. So that's all I have on that front. So we'll come back to budget more towards the end.
All right, so pub members, this topic was actually on our working plan for this past year, and it was flagged a couple of times in the previous meetings for items that we haven't quite sunk our teeth into so far. And so we have about 30 to 40 minutes allocated. And so I just want to welcome our ex officio member, Joanne Johnson, who's also Portland Water Bureau staff, to help present like an overview on the hiring, retention, and promotion report. And then it looks like we also have Jill Windsor here, and possibly Blake Dye, to assist with this. So just want to welcome all of you, and take it away, Joanne.
And Joanne, I just wanted to mention as you get started that any of the documents that you sent, if it's helpful, and for members, if it's helpful at any point to pull those up, I have any of those queued. So just let me know if you want me to pull anything on screen, or I can drop stuff off screen if it's easier for folks to just see people's faces as you all are discussing. So just let me know.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, Amy. I trust that everyone has the materials they need pulled up in front of them. If there's something you'd like Amy or I to screen share, definitely let me know. So again, I'm Joanne Johnson. I'm an ex officio and part of the Portland Water Bureau. And Blake Dye and Jill Windsor also worked with me on this report, and they're both here. So that's exciting. So you'd asked for an update on the Portland Water Bureau's hiring, retention, and promotion. And I worked with Blake Dye, our people operations manager, Jill Windsor, our employee experience and development manager, and Eric Pacheco, our equity and policy team manager, to pull together the report. Camilla, go this way. That I sent to you last week. I wanted to do a quick recap of the report, and then I thought we could spend most of our time on questions and conversation. As I know, we sent out a lot of materials. So we offered the report, and we also offered a number of materials from our employee engagement survey that was conducted in 21-22. So the people operations team and the employee experience and development team are part of how our Bureau was responsive to both the employee-led strategic planning process that happened about 4 years ago, and the employee engagement report that you all received information on. Both the employee experience and development team and the people operations unit build the Bureau's capacity to support employees and create an environment where employees can succeed. So the first section in this report is people operations, and the people operations unit has really been focused on recruiting for vacancies and building the capacity of this team to best serve the Bureau. They've recognized where the Bureau is lagging behind the city as a whole in terms of demographic makeup, and they plan to build on the Bureau's investments in targeted recruitment. They've also identified some areas of focus to better understand employee transition from the Bureau. And there's also some demographic charts in this section that underlie the points that are made in that report. The Employee Experience and Development Team is pursuing initiatives that will create a more supportive work environment and provide opportunities for staff to develop, like a people management learning journey for managers, which is a collaboration between the two teams, SOAKed, which is an opportunity for employees already at the Bureau to learn about and experience work in different parts of the Bureau, and supporting the City Mentorship Program and Path to Leadership programs. And then the final section of the report was the Equity and Policy Team. With the expanded capacity at the Bureau that we have from the People Operations Team and the Employee Experience and Development teams, the Equity and Policy Team really is focusing more deeply on policy. And I can talk about some of those policy areas later. But I did want to share some past workforce wins that were compiled by the Equity and Policy Team in past years, and some information about the almost approved Water Bureau accessibility policies that do have a workforce accessibility section that are going to set standards for workplace accessibility around disability and language access. So those are the major sections of the report and the highlights of the report. I want to invite Blake or Jill to add anything that I may have missed or anything that they'd especially like to highlight. And if not, that's okay. All right. So I'm wondering what questions you all have, what discussion you'd like to have. I'm happy to attempt any responses I can, or of course, go back to the folks who actually know and get you better information.
Looks like
Any?
Lorraine has their hand up. Go ahead, Lorraine.
Oh, thank you. I can't see anybody's hand. I'll have to
No
change that.
problem. Lorraine Wilson, PUB
Hi, Lorraine.
voting member. The first question I have is, what does soaked mean? I clicked on it, but I didn't get in to see what soaked means.
Jill and Phoebe, who led Soaked, told us multiple times. I'll see if I can remember. It's sharing our assets, knowledge for employee development. Sharing our assets and knowledge for employee development. I have a feeling they came up. This Soaked is a program that happened prior to the pandemic, and I have a feeling that someone came up with the acronym before they came up with the words.
And do we have access to that? So I could read to probably scan it to get a sense of what is being referenced to.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. I
Okay.
thought it was linked in the report. You said that.
It is linked, but when you click on it, you don't, it shuts you out if you're not an employee. So, and I'm
I
not.
see.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was one of the questions I have, but that's not the only question.
Okay, I can check with Jill on getting you all some information on Soaked. And
I was reading the executive summary to
Mhm.
find out the why. And so the executive summary says the Portland Water Bureau conducted an employee engagement survey to understand and increase employees' engagement levels.
Mhm.
Why did the Bureau thought that it was necessary? Why the why?
That's a good question. I think it was part of our strategic planning process. And Jill or Blake, if you know for sure, please jump in. But I believe part of our strategic planning process was that staff were asked to identify, what could potentially be a risk to the Bureau, what are things that the Bureau should be paying attention to. And one of the things was employee satisfaction and employee engagement.
Okay, thanks. Thanks,
Sure.
Joanne.
Of
And
course.
I'm sorry, Karen, I was reviewing this and I'm looking at some of the, I was reading through the employee engagement survey communication plan. And one of the questions I have regarding section 4, 5, and 6, in reading it, I wasn't clear on what the focus goals are. So it's guiding supervisors to have this conversation with staff, share findings, hear what they say, document what they say, follow up on what they say, and to hold meetings. But I'm not sure how would these, I don't know, is it recommendations, guidance, or whatever?
Mhm.
What does success look like for what has been shared in this communication plan? When the supervisors and managers go out to say, hey, we've done this survey, we've gotten this data, here are the things we find, and I want to hear from you all what you all think about it. And when you get this information, what are you going to do with that information? How is it going to be tracked? How it is going to be assessed? I'm just not sure that I'm getting that. And if someone can help me with what I'm missing, I would appreciate that.
So I can certainly check back in with Eric, who worked with Daron on the employee engagement survey and on the communications guidance and recommendations, and see if he has more to add on what success would look like as far as if managers and supervisors were communicating well, what that feedback would look like. But if Jill or Blake, you have any sense from the work you're planning going forward, also feel free to jump in. I just know this happened before Blake and Jill came on, so I don't want to put them in a position of speaking to something they weren't part of. Jill, yes, go ahead.
Jill Windsor, Portland Water Bureau. Lorraine, I can't speak to exactly what the plan was previously. As Joanne said, it was before my time at Water. We are exploring the possibility of conducting an employee engagement survey more regularly. That is a pretty common practice among organizations of our size to have that engagement survey on a cyclical kind of cycle. And I think we will be having conversations about goal setting and what it looks like to measure. One of the conversations we're having right now is to review the recommendations that came out of that report and identify places where we have taken action. There are some pieces of recommendations that we have worked on. I wouldn't say that from what I can tell, there was any sort of SMART goal attached to those or any sort of percentage or change we were looking for at that time. But we are evaluating, have we taken action to try to address some of these goals before we would begin a process to resurvey staff?
So basically the information that this survey has provided, it is now just going to be shared with staff. That's what's happening?
This was shared with staff a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was all shared with staff a few years ago. So I'm sorry, I should clarify something. When I got the ask from Amy, she included the 2021, 2022 technical memo written by PUB with workforce recommendations. And so when I compiled the report, I sought out anything from then to now. So it includes things like the 2021, 2022 engagement survey, because that happened at least partially after your technical report.
Okay, so from 2022 till now, Has
Mhm.
anything been acted on in this survey, based on this survey? No? Yes?
I mean, part of that is the employee experience and development teams and the people operation teams is like having identified in specific capacity so that we can address employee concerns and make sure employees are getting served as well as our customers. You know, helping make sure that we have an environment that works best for employees.
And I'm sorry, I don't want to hog this too much because I see
No, it's
Karen's
okay.
hands up. But the other question
I
is, what are the key things that are being worked on right now based on this this report?
I mean, the key things I can, Jill, go ahead, Jill, please.
Jill again. We actually recently in the last couple days compiled some of those, so I have pulled them up to kind of quickly run through them.
Mm-hmm.
So we are working on expanding training capacity and access to professional development resources. As was stated in the report that Joanne has been covering, there was previously a job shadow program at Water Bureau. We're evaluating and have found that the way that program was structured wasn't terribly effective. So at this point, we don't know what job shadow will look like moving forward, but we are committed to working very closely with staff and different work groups to think about skill development, skill building, training opportunities for folks to shadow other positions. So that is one key piece, expanding capacity and access to professional development resources. That's mostly been research at this point and sort of getting a sense of what would be most effective for the Bureau in this moment. We also have a training community across the Bureau. So all the folks who provide training in the Bureau come together to discuss best practices and discuss ways to improve training so that our staff are receiving the highest quality. We have implemented LinkedIn Learning. So we have a contract with LinkedIn Learning, which allows employees to access whatever sort of video learning opportunities they're interested in. So that is one way we've provided just easy access to training that folks can engage in, again, supporting that development of our staff. And we're beginning on a project, it's in the design phase, to really invest in our managers. So this moving away from employee development, we're focusing on investment in our managers. So what that looks like is in our strategic plan, there was a clear call to action to create space for managers to just connect and convene and share best practices with each other. And where there's also a desire to make sure that our managers are well trained in providing people management. There is an upcoming Bureau of Human Resources Supervisor Fundamentals training that we'll be utilizing as kind of our kickoff for this work. So using that training to better prepare our managers for the work they have related to people management, and also creating cohort groups for those managers to talk with each other and skill share and really sort of lean in and recognize the skills that our managers already bring to the table. We're hoping to launch that this fall. It's in design phase at this time. And yes, as Joanne said, I think having my position filled, having Blake join the Water Bureau, we've really invested in both recruitment and people operations with Blake's team, and then my team, the employee experience and development team. We did not exist when this engagement survey was first done. So having those actual people resources, I think, will really sort of accelerate our progress on these goals.
And two more questions. What is the budget? What's the professional development or training budget? Because in a former life, when I worked at the city, I think it was $150, and John could correct me, but it was something like $200 or $150 when we work in a prior bureau.
My understanding is each bureau budgets that differently. I don't have exact numbers for water. I know that managers are encouraged to budget for professional development. I don't know those exact numbers. That is worth, I believe we may have them explicitly outlined, but I don't actually know them. So that's something we can look into.
And finally, on page 31 of the overall report, T16, it says, There is sexism in the Bureau that is pervasive and not regularly acknowledged. Is that one of the areas you all are looking at seriously?
I'm going to pitch that one, I think, back to Joanne, because I think the equity team has focused more explicitly on race and disability, but I may.
Yeah, and the city has focused more explicitly on race and disability. I do remember, well, that's about recruitment. There's nothing that I can speak to. I can check with Eric and see if there's anything he would put forward as an effort on addressing gender inequity, but I know that our team has really begun to focus on policies that affect how we serve our customers and not so much on workforce related policies.
Thank you all so much.
Sure. Thanks for the questions. Karen.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Lorraine, for your questions. The questions you were asking were many that I was interested in as well, and I also appreciate the stepping back and looking at the broader context was also helpful. And I have another context question.
Sure.
I am a little confused when we seem to be referring to different documents as the report. And I just want to make sure that I understand what reports we're talking about and how they relate to each other. And then I think I do have a specific question. So we have the report on the engagement survey.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a report. And then we have this update that was and just short document that's an update.
Yes.
And then there's a reference in the update to, I think it's called Equity Achievements Report.
Report, yes. Yes.
So, and then there's the strategic plans.
Right.
They aren't exactly reports, but so I just want to make sure, are those all the reports that we're talking about? And let me just stop there.
So the reports Lorraine was referring to was largely the report on the employee engagement survey and the communications on that.
Right.
But yes, we can talk about any of those.
Sure. Okay. So let's see. So my specific question is many of the items that are in the update, so actions that were taken. Yes. So those actions that are summarized in the update, are those mostly well, I shouldn't say mostly, to what reports are those actions based on?
The strategic plan.
Okay, exactly.
The strategic, yeah.
Okay.
Which incorporates, I don't want to say that and be wrong. I was going to say, as we learned things, we updated the strategic plan, but I don't know that for sure. So I retract that. That may not be true.
Okay, that's fine, because I'm presuming the strategic plan 20 to 24, it was written in 2020 before the 21-22 engagement survey was right? Okay. All right. So that's great. And now I think my specific question is about the mentorship program that's described. Let's see, I think it's with this. Yeah, so it's in the section employee experience and development. Yeah, so does the city have, well, I should say the Water Bureau have, or are they considering any kind of financial, I want to know, I'll call them incentives for someone to either be a mentor or to kind of sign up in a mentorship program? Is there any kind of, differential or, any recognition of people who take the time to engage in the mentorship program from either side?
I'm not sure the Bureau would be allowed to do that. I'm not a lawyer, but I just know that we're really, really thoughtful about how we allocate funds. And I see Cecilia has popped on. Cecilia, please go ahead.
Cecilia Huon, Water Finance Director. To answer your question, Karen, the answer is we currently do not have that. And yeah, I don't know if the Bureau can independently be doing that. It would be something that I suspect we would have to work with cities, Bureau of Human Resources, and likely to be something that would be citywide that would be available then.
Okay, good. Thanks for that. Let me be quiet for a minute and see if I have any more questions. I do appreciate having this information pulled together, and especially the update. So thanks to all for the effort put into that.
Of course. Lorraine.
I can always jump off if somebody else have a question, but since nobody seemed to have a question at the moment, I was also looking at page 30 on the actual report, the long report, where the question was concerning, I'm actually looking at T15. Employer across all the demographics prefer private and public statement of gratitude as recognition for their efforts. So when they broke it down into white men, women, BIPOC, LGBTQ, people with disability, the top thing that came out was verbal or written recognition for peers or managers, right? It's on page 30 of the report. However, when we move down to the second most important thing, yep, right there. The second most important thing across the board, except for one group, is pay increase. But for BIPOC, it's fair treatment and performance reviews. I found that interesting. And then when you go to the third, you see fair treatment showing up and whatever. So my question is, and I know that you all are now getting into this, is how do you address that where for one particular group, fair treatment and performance reviews is more important than across the board pay increase for every other group that was surveyed? And when you take that in context of why it falls there, I'm just curious about that. I found that an interesting little statement that BIPOC group put fair treatment and performance above pay increase, unlike all the other represented groups.
What I heard when I was gathering this report is that the teams across the Bureau are working to improve treatment and regularity of performance reviews for all groups. And I hear your point, Lorraine, that it means something that this came up for one group and not for other groups. And I think the Bureau is addressing it more globally. And Jill, I think some of the things your team is doing is part of addressing that, the success factors and getting that to be more consistent across the city. And what you've already spoken to with regard to employee experience and supporting managers to be good people managers. I'm not sure what to add beyond that. Is there something specific you're hoping I can speak to, Lorraine?
No, I was just curious about what this data point or what I was just curious as I was reading it to know if the significance of that was noted or whether it's going to be, well, 435 say that pay increase is important, so let's focus on pay increase. It was just that simple. I was curious about it, about how it's going to be handled, what that statement says and how it's going to be handled. You know, whether it's, well, the majority say pay increase, so let's focus on pay increase. Oh my God, this specific group is talking about fair treatment and performance reviews when we know historically that this has been one of the main concerns of the BIPOC community. So that is why I wanted to raise it, because I wanted to know, based on this, as it goes back to my initial statement, is what is going to be done about the information that the data that has been gathered in this report, right, in 2022 or whenever it was gathered. So that is why I asked the question, because I wanted to bring it forward to know, hey, are you all seeing this? Are you all recognizing what this means by what it says? And how is that being tracked and addressed? And if anybody else raise their hand, just let me know. I will allow others to speak, because I've been speaking a lot. And then also, when I was looking at page 35 and 36, it's 35 is speaking about regarding management style. And on page 35, regarding management style, there's a lot of stops, and stops are opportunities, but stops mean a lot of stuff. And then regarding recruitment and retention, and one of the words that came up was nepotism. And being able to stop being able to see name and headshot. That one was, that was, yeah, to the next page. Being able to see name and headshots. Are those still required, that people submit resumes with name, with headshots? I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I've been on over 15 interview panels in my 8 years at the city, and I've never seen a headshot.
Yeah, but I was curious about that, if that is unique to the Water Bureau, or that is still occurring. But yeah, those are some of the things that I was looking at that stood out to me, because I think that this report has a lot of rich information. But getting the data is one thing, is what you're going to do about it. And I think that is my main concern, because there are a lot of things. When I read that, I hadn't read the whole report, and reviewing the report, I took a quick review, and reading the engagement survey communication plan, what was the guidance given to managers, and what is actually in the report. I'm a little concerned that if this communication plan, employee engagement survey communication plan, was really focused on getting to the concerns raised and addressing them as they were presented. So yeah.
Joe, did you have something to add?
Joe Spotto, ex officio Water Bureau staff. I just wanted to add on to what Joanne was saying. I've been with the city for 10 years and been on both sides of doing interviews, submitting applications, and being the interviewee. I have not once ever had to submit a headshot, and primarily in customer service, my tenure with the city, and again, not once that a headshot has ever been required of me, and that I've ever seen a headshot required. So this was more or less shocking to see this in here as a thing, but that sounds to me like it was something of the far past. Thank you.
And Lorraine, to your deeper question about what was the intention behind gathering this information and how is it going to be responded to, I know Eric worked a really long time and he worked really hard to be able to both conduct this 2021-2022 employee engagement survey and hire Dr. Duran Coles, as an outside consultant to make sure that it was conducted in a way that got the most useful information from employees without employees feeling like they were put at risk of having to talk about these things in front of a manager. You know, they hosted specific focus groups. They had lots of ways of getting input. To how the Bureau is using the information, I can only offer what I've already shared. I can go back to Eric and see if he has more to add. But beyond that, I don't have more to add on how we're going to respond to each of the points in the survey.
I think the only thing I could add, Joanne, just because I was in the conversations with the pub members who were part of the developing the report previously and having those conversations with Eric. And so I recall specifically some of Lorraine's points, specifically about some of that discrepancy was raised similarly. And I know at the time, particularly because similarly, the focus was on race and disability. And there was a lot of conversation about interest in disaggregating data and really looking at going beyond doing the opposite of doing exactly what Lorraine was suggesting, is not just looking at, oh, the majority wants this, so this is where we're focusing, but really looking at addressing kind of some deeper rooted issues on, you know, okay, this is rising to the level and is different than what the majority is. So maybe that's where we need to focus. And so there were conversations about that at the time. And so I don't know what has happened since then. So, you know, it would be interesting to have some conversations and learn a little bit more from Eric about that. But I know that at least at the time, Eric was tuned into that and was very interested in that data and not looking at just what the majority showed, but actually what the disaggregated data was. And that was important to Pub at the time. And Eric was in line with that as well. There was a lot of what Pub was advocating for lined up with what the equity managers from both bureaus were interested in as well.
Thank you. That's great context.
And I do want to acknowledge, Joanne, that I appreciate the effort that was placed, and based on the information that was gathered, clearly, I think employees felt comfortable sharing the information that they shared. So I'm really impressed with how the survey and was conducted based on the information, because clearly people felt comfortable giving honest feedback. So I just wanted to state that, because you know that is not what my concern is. It's just that there was some honest information here, and I'm like, okay, what is being done about it? You know, we could survey till the cows come home. And get data upon data and data. And sometimes people get in the loop of gathering data. Let's get more data, and let's get more data. And what is being brought up is not addressed. So that's the point I wanted to make. So thanks so much, Joanne, for bringing this forward to us. I really appreciate it.
Sure, of course. Other questions or thoughts?
think it's just to echo and build upon what Lorraine said, and just to carry the torch of because as staff and for the pub members who worked so passionately on the report that was shared, that really was where their heart was as well, because the data and the survey that you all did was so rich and really provided a lot of valuable information. And that's really where all of their ideas came from. And so their interest really was on, okay, there's all this really rich information. Let's not lose it. Let's build on it and make sure that there's some outcomes to build towards. And so that was their intent behind the report, was to build upon something, and in hopes that down the road, years later, they'd be able to look back and see, okay, are we moving the needle? Are we able to move in the direction that we want to be, that we hope that the Bureau is able to move, recognizing that budgets haven't, supported all of the progress that the Bureau has hoped for, but, wanting to see, where things have moved in the right direction, whether things were aligning the way that they were supposed to, or are there other ways that the pub can continue to try to support the Bureau in ways that are lining up with what they've identified as priorities, so that the board can continue to support the Bureau in the areas that are clear priorities for them.
Yeah, so thank you for the continued conversation context. One of the things that Eric mentioned to me that might be supportive from Pub is one of the barriers we have as a Bureau is that our demographic data comes from BHR, and we can't get data disaggregated by work group. So some of you might know the Water Bureau is divided up into 7 different work groups, and with different functions and different management and, different major work groups. And we can't get data from BHR disaggregated by work group. And from BHR, their thinking is that if we disaggregate data too far, there's a risk of identifying employees. I mean, if you say, who's the disabled white woman who works in business services, it could very well be me if I'm the only one who identified as disabled in the information. So I understand where they're coming from. At the same time, Eric believes that if we could get that data disaggregated by work group, we could do more to speak to specific experiences that specific identity groups are having in the Bureau, because someone's experience working in MNC and someone's experience working in operations and someone's experience working in business services might be really, really different. So that was something that came up in my conversation with Eric when we were preparing for this report. Something else that he and I talked about is just that we are being very thoughtful about when we explicitly talk about our work and how it impacts specific identity groups because of recent case law and because of recent very strong political pushback on efforts that are targeted at specific communities. And so sometimes we are doing work that will be for an entire Bureau, but will support specific identities, but that's not always named because we want to have time and space to do the work and not be working around people's concerns. We'd rather spend our time doing the work. So I don't know if either of those pieces of information is helpful, but I did want to share that. Karen, you've been so patient.
No, it's all good and informative. So yeah, not a question of patience, just listening.
Sure.
Karen Williams, voting member. In the interest of, I think Amy is probably, and Robin are probably flagging that they want to move on. So I will just leave a comment, if I may, on something that would be helpful to me as a pub member when presenting particularly this topic, and information about progress being made, shall we say. I like using today as an example. It would have been so I say this first with this is a very nice update, and it has a lot of good information and, you know, things to chew on and consider for future. So I'm not at all saying it's not presented accessibly and all of that. But just sort of for the next update or the next report, what's helpful for me is to see the connections between problems, areas of concern that have been identified, such as many of the examples that Lorraine was pulling out of the 2022 survey report, to see the connection between the concern or the issue or the problem and the action that's being taken. I mean, so I understand there's not always going to be like a direct line, you know, problems aren't that simple, but just if some of the recommendations or concerns or problems could be, you know, again, respecting people's privacy and their stories and, you know, protecting them from future harm and all of that, but could be sort of summarized or, you know, similar kinds of concerns maybe put together. And then in presenting, okay, now what are we doing about it? You know, some kind of a figure of not exactly a flow chart, but just, you know, the people operations group was has been stood up in response to these 3 or 4 areas that were identified as concerns in the employee engagement survey, just as an example.
Sure.
Those kinds of connections are helpful for me to understand, you know, why certain actions are being taken, why they were prioritized, why resources are being put towards this action, that kind of thing.
I appreciate that, Karen, and that's good for me to hear. I didn't realize when I was preparing this that Pub would want a point-by-point response to the employee engagement survey report, or I would have taken more time to try and get that information. I do have some questions on next steps for Pub, for me. So Lorraine and Karen, you both raised a number of good questions that I couldn't fully speak to about how we're responding to different parts of the employee engagement report from 2021 to 2022. Do you want a point-by-point response from me and the Bureau, or were you hoping for something else? I just want to make sure I get you what you need.
I could jump in.
Sure.
Joanne. I don't. Okay, so I'm falling back on our oh gosh, help me, Amy, on our role as pub, as the pub, right? So we have a specific role as pub members. However, a big part of that is employees, right? If we want to maintain rates or affordable rates, some elements of that is employees' well-being and how things are done efficiently and all that stuff in there. So the thing is, I think it was informative to see the report. For some reason, I missed that it was done in 2022. I thought it was more recent. So it was good to know that it was done in 2022. But having gotten that information, I'm like, oh, okay, so it was since 2022. What are the things that have been identified and what is being done? How is it being tracked? How do we know that things are moving along before we get to the next survey, right? And then when we get to the next survey, we get the information, oh, nothing has changed. So I was just curious about all these things here, and I didn't read the whole report, and I didn't take time to read the report. I was just flipping through, looking at some of the things that attracted me. And I was just curious to know, okay, we have all this rich information. What is being done? And I think that is what I'm more interested in, as Karen says. What are the things that are being done to address these clear, honest issues that staff felt? Because it's one thing asking people over and over, hey, what it is bothering you? But when you do nothing about it, then people are like, I don't care. We'll just continue being. So there'll be no culture change. There'll be nothing that will happen. There'll be no team building. There'll be nothing that happens. That the intent is, because I am always of the opinion, if you're not going to do anything about it, don't ask. That's probably a safer place to be. So that is what I was curious about, is just the fact of, okay, what has been done? And there was some low-hanging fruit there. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit that can be addressed. So I think that is where I sit.
Okay. And so what you'd like from me is to bring back what is being done in response to the employee engagement survey and the findings in it.
Yes.
Okay. I will work with the folks on my team to get you whatever information I can on that. Thank you.
And Joanne, just to respond to your question, I was not looking for a point by point, direct connection between recommendation, to a little number I and this particular action. So no, I was not looking for, expecting, and I am not asking for that.
Okay.
My comment was just something to consider for future updates, that when context is given, such as just looking at the intro paragraph of the update, that these actions are in alignment with the Water Bureau's plan to advance equity, diversity, and inclusion, and that the work plans for the two teams, people operations and employee experience, are responsive to strategic plan and engagement survey. I'm just looking for a little bit more examples, maybe, show me where things are in alignment. I don't need every last thing.
Right.
For example, action, the people operations department is being, or department, but group is being set up to be responsive to these couple elements in the strategic plan, or these 2 or 3 areas identified in the employee engagement survey. But I'm not asking for that to, like, right now, or for that to be brought back next meeting, or I'm not asking for that at all. It's just, please consider that
some feedback
updates.
for, yeah, I appreciate that. And I think I focused a little too much on being concise and succinct, because I didn't want to overwhelm you all with information. But yes, thank you. I can do that in the future.
Thank you. I think you actually did a really good job of providing a good summary, and then some additional detail that provided opportunity to dive a little bit deeper where they could. I think you probably fell a little bit into this gap where the pub has had this big gap in between, where it's been quite a while since they have connected with the Bureau's strategic or equity plans. And so it has been on their list of their work plans of desire to reconnect with the Bureaus on status updates for their equity plans and their strategic plans, but their work plans are just busy with all these other project updates and other key things that hasn't really happened. And you both bureaus have really been advancing forward in both your strategic and equity plans. And so I think a lot of work has moved forward in both of those. And there hasn't been an opportunity to kind of bring particularly a lot of changeover in members back up to speed with those documents as well. And then making those connections is a little easier when you're coming and talking about specifics as well. So that was maybe a little more challenging for you when you're talking about one specific element, workforce equity, within that larger document. So good job with the challenging topic and being
Thanks
run
everybody
into
for
it last minute.
for the time. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Right. So we are short on time. So let me get back to where we were.
No, that is all right. I want to thank the pub members for bringing their hard-hitting questions as always. I want to thank Joanne and everyone else that assisted her with answering questions regarding this. I know that it's an important topic for us, and it has me thinking, does BES have a recent employee engagement survey? And then thinking on the broader horizon of Public Works, if PBOT has engaged in something like this, and if there are similar threads among the 3 Public Works bureaus that we can be looking at as we move into charter reform.
So I'm not sure about engagement survey, but we do have BES on the potential agenda for the next meeting for workforce equity, some conversation. So I do have a check-in with some of BES staff to identify whether it's feasible for the June 20th meeting, and identifying the right folks for that connection. So we will check and see whether that is a possibility. So.
Sounds good to me. So looks like we'll skip past the second portion of the conversation. You can jump back. I didn't mean to skip past that unless I didn't read the thing correctly. Yep, no worries. Go back to where you were, Amy. Amy knows best.
Yeah. So we don't quite have enough time to do this work, although I did want to just flag that one of the topics that we were going to be talking about is about the budget process recommendations. So just for the pub members who are present, we did brainstorm, began the conversation about budget process recommendations. And so I'm guessing that will be on the agenda, hopefully for the next June meeting, because again, we don't want to miss this window of opportunity. And I did want to mention just because actually just earlier today, I was in an internal meeting just with the budget office staff who has just having some internal conversations about budget process planning, and was asked some questions about public engagement and recommendations for budget process, and wanting to bring some of PUB's recommendations into that conversation. And so I'm going to use the document that you all have created just as a beginning of starting place, as well as just ideas that I have. But as if there's anything else that you all have on the table or that you're brainstorming as you think about ways to improve just citywide the budget process or how people engage in the process, please reach out to me and let me know, because the sooner I have that information as I'm having conversations with other people internally. A lot of times these things happen pretty informally, just happen to run into somebody or have a conversation, and that's sometimes the way it happens. So I don't want to miss an opportunity. So if you have ideas, just let me know, and I am happy to share them with whoever asks. So since we don't have the chance to continue that conversation today, like I hoped, we'll hopefully have that at one of the upcoming meetings. So we did want to do a few quick updates before we close the meeting today. So FYI, the pub appointments that you all approved at the last meeting, unfortunately, the time certain were full for June. So the commissioner was able to confirm the appointments for the July 3rd meeting. I'm hoping that they'll still be able to participate in the July 2nd meeting. Their just appointments won't officially be official until the day after that on July 3rd. But it makes it a lot easier when it's a time certain, so that they don't have to sit through or not know if they will have to show up until sometime late in the day. So it should be 10 a.m. on July 3rd that they will be appointed. Sounds like maybe 2 of them will be able to attend. One of them is not able to because they'll be out of town, but 2 of them will be able to attend. So just FYI, nobody else needs to be there. You all don't need to, but just wanted you to be aware that it was taking place. Also, staff recruitment for the support position hopefully will be going forward. I just wanted to put the word out there in case any of you are interested in volunteering to be serve on reviewing applications or on interview panel. Please let me know. It certainly would welcome anybody who is interested. So message me, reach out, or raise your hand. Let me know today. I don't know what that process will look like, but we'll work on it together. So, and hopefully it will move as quickly as it does in our bureaucracy, but hopefully we'll fill that as quickly as we can. As Robin mentioned at the prior meeting, hoping to plan some sort of field trip. I'll work with the bureaus on that. So just wanted to start to put feelers out for availability, particularly if any of you have significant travel coming up in the warm summer months. So I'll be sending out some doodle polls for availability just to get a sense of when I'm most likely to get the most of you available. So be watching for that and try to respond quickly. And I'll also be sending out a request later today for administrative review committees. Just wanted to remind you that the new folks, although they'll be starting in July, as you know, it's a little nerve-wracking sitting on one of the administrative review committees right when you've joined the pub. So likely they will want to shadow one of you in those first couple months. And then hopefully then once they're on board, that will more easily spread among all of the voting members once we're fully staffed again. Any other announcements before we wrap up? Did I miss anything, Robin or others?
Just that I am likely not going to be at the next meeting, so I'm going to have to catch it on the video recording, which means that one of you lovely people in this room are going to likely have to assist in facilitation if possible. I would really appreciate any volunteers. So if you have the time and energy at the next meeting, we would love a facilitator, the help from someone to facilitate the meeting along with Amy.
All right.
Yeah, other than that, if possible, I do like the idea of discussing BES's workforce equities. I think it'll be a nice continuation of the topics and questions we got out of today will help us navigate that topic. If there's nothing else being raised, I think meeting is adjourned.